Raising Unicorns!
Harmon Brothers!
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Raising Unicorns. I am Shane Rickard and I am joined today with the one and only amazing Kellen Erskine!
It's time to chat with a legend!
That's legendary.
So Kellen is one of the writers that's worked with us for quite a few years. How many years has it been, Kellen?
2018. So
2018, 5 years.
Do the math.
5 years, yeah.
2023 minus.
Minus 2018. 1, 2, 3, 4. 5 years.
Yeah.
Give people your background in comedy and like kind of where you got like where you are, where you came from and where you are at this point.
Yeah, started doing open mics when I was 23. Happened to live in the San Jose, San Francisco Bay Area, which happened to be at the time just one of the like few great spots for comedy in the whole country. So started hitting those mics, sports pubs, bars, coffee shops, places where they would just, most open mics are a place where on a random day of the week, somebody decides to impose a comedy show unsolicited to the public.
And they're like, I just want a coffee. Great. Now I got this comedian hucking jokes at me.
It's like,
so I'm sure it's a very warm reception every time you go, right?
it's incredible because it is like with stand-up, you have to learn on the job. There's no other way to do it.
Yeah.
No matter how many times you practice in the car in front of a mirror, you just cannot do it.
You can't replicate the energy and the feedback.
Yeah. And without strangers in front of you. Exactly. It can't even just be like an audience of your family. It has to be people you don't know. And then in these environments...
Because they don't care about you. They don't care if they're mean to you.
And that's where honesty comes from.
Yeah.
But what I love about stand-up is like we have the luxury versus most other emotions is that like the response, laughter it's involuntary.
Yeah.
And especially strangers aren't going to fake laugh at you. So you have this like real-time instant feedback loop in the worst conditions possible.
Just it can be the biggest high or the most devastating low
Oh,
possible.
Yeah. So worked through those. After a couple of years, I started getting into the clubs in the Bay Area, and it's crazy with stand-up. Like there's they say there's 6 degrees of separation. There's really just one in stand-up. So like once you get like a tight 8 minutes, already I was working with like Norm Macdonald, Bob Saget, Robin Williams, like these big giants.
Why did you name every comedian that is now dead? Was that subconscious? It's
No,
like, I
I'm
name
just
dropped them
saying-
because now they're legends because they're dead. That's the type of comic.
All right, let me redo that. Groucho Marx, Bob Hope. Nah, still no.
Groucho Marx. How old are you? Are you ageless?
I'm saying back in the 2000s, these pre-dead comics. I started getting around this circuit, and then the more time you spend in an area, the more opportunities you get. And it just got to the point. Everybody says like at some point you have to move to LA or New York, especially as an actor. But it works in the entertainment industry. It's changing now because of the Wild West of social media. But at the time, it was LA or New York. So I do that for 8-9 years in the Bay Area, moved to Los Angeles. We had a 5-year plan. If I don't get an agent in 5 years, we have to rethink everything, right? And I fought that fight for 3.5, almost 4 years, and finally got that agent. And it really shows how much an agent, especially at the time, was a rubber stamp that was needed because I had the material. Just getting better and better at it. And that's something like advice that I give every comic, like anyone in the entertainment industry, is that like everyone wants to be discovered. But what was comforting me along the journey is like, fine, but until I get there, I'm only getting better until I get there. So that when I got there, I already had like this pack of ammo that I would not have had. And honestly, like my bike lock joke which was like the highlight of my dry bar and the Conan set that I did. I was on Conan. It happened just a few months.
Kimmel.
I developed that just a few months before I got my agent. And so anyway, with all of that, yeah.
How close was getting your agent to dry bar? Was that close, or was it like?
It was less than a year later. So I get the agent.
That was like all super tight.
Yeah. It all sort of happened in a row. Got the agent, dry bar, and then Conan. Yeah, that all happened the same year.
That's wild. That's crazy, man.
So that was it. So then that was when I was introduced to you guys too. And it was neat because speaking of COVID, like it was at least like, I had a lot of comedian friends who literally also had been on TV and now they were literally driving for Uber again. And so to have Harmon Brothers and to lean into that a little bit more, at least it's sort of a lateral move. At least I'm still writing jokes.
Yeah.
Even if all of them aren't just for me, like at least I'm, making fun of pancakes while the world burns.
When you're actually like watching TV or you're like on Instagram or whatever, I don't know. Are you on TikTok?
I have been.
What type of content or like what type of ads specifically would you say would like are the ones that you're like, that was a great ad? Like I really like that ad. So like what does the ad look like and why do you like it?
The difference is for me, because I know that you guys talk about this too, like sometimes even if an ad is memorable, it might not be connected to the product. Yeah. And so you remember the ad. Like the Outpost is a big example of that. Yeah. Those ads in the 90s where they're like shooting gerbils at the word Outpost, just trying to get it in the O.
Or like the unleashing the pack of wolves.
Yeah, on the field.
On the field for the marching band.
And to this day, I still don't know what Outpost did. And I don't want to look it up because I never want to know.
I won't tell you.
So yeah, anything that's funny out of the gate. We were talking just recently about maybe my favorite ad of all time is the McDonald's or the Burger King one. Oh, yeah, when the Burger King, I don't want to give away all of it, but essentially the Burger King, the creepy king head that they did a lot in the 2000s. Such a bizarre marketing move. They were like, how about instead of funny, we just go disturbing. He puts on a burglar mask. He hops a fence to this, looks like a McDonald's factory or office building. He breaks in at night with a flashlight, opens a file and pulls out the folder for the Egg McMuffin. And it's because Burger King was making their own breakfast sandwich. And the end of the ad was, yeah, it's pretty much the same thing.
Just so unabashed.
Yeah.
But like, it's such a good example of like, it stuck so well, like to exactly what they were trying to convey. The whole thing, like all the setup was around the recipe and him trying to go steal it. And it was basically like, yeah, it's pretty much the same thing. It's like, oh, now they do an Egg McMuffin.
Yeah, which is what all of us would have thought anyway. So it's like you're beating us to the punch. You're making a joke out of it. So now instead of the public going, you're just copying McDonald's, it's like, haha, they know they're copying McDonald's.
You're like, we did. And we said that before you could.
Yeah. So I love that layered on top of all the humor is now this just owning the thing, like owning what could be negative.
On the same topic of like really effective ads, I'm going to like, I guess a really good example with the Burger King one, but there was one that like, I remember when Dave Vance, who is also the co-host with Kellen of the Book Pile podcast, their incredible podcast. I'm not kidding you guys. I'm not just saying this because I know Dave and Kellen. It's so good. You could say a little spiel about it if you want.
Oh yeah, it's a comedy podcast about books. I feel like we're fair to books. We talk about every episode is a different book. We talk about books that we love, sometimes books that we hate. Some of my favorite episodes are our roast episodes. We've roasted like the Da Vinci Code, Twilight, the novelization of the movie Transformers.
Dude, that episode was so good. If you only listen to one, but you should listen to many. The Transformer one, absolutely, like it was so good. It absolutely laid me out. It was so funny.
It's not so much that we summarize books; we just pull out lessons, a lot of like creative lessons from fiction and nonfiction. And we put a lot into it because Dave and I, we prepare half of what happens on the podcast so that there's jokes, we improvise, and then afterwards I edit it and I cut out all the boring stuff. So
it's a very tightly edited podcast. There's one joke that Dave wrote that was so funny. It was for I don't know if you've seen this one, but it was the Angels and Demons episode. Angels and Demons ad we did for VidAngel way back in the day, and it was basically saying the joke setup was like Sniper without all the swearing, or Transformers 4 without all of it because it's a terrible movie. But it was like a setup of like the rule of threes of setting it up and establishing expectation, and then like just was so punchy and so funny, but it also was such a good joke because it was still explicitly explaining what the product did. It was very clear. It's like you're filtering out what you don't like, and you can filter out an entire movie if you don't like the movie, which is absurd, preposterous like idea. But it was so funny, and that was consistently like, and that ad is. We should tell Dave this. He'd be proud of this. That ad is still running.
Whoa.
6 years later, we were talking to the CMO of VidAngel because now they're separate from Angel Studios. But he was like, "Yeah, man, like that's still going strong. Like that one's still crushing it." And I was like, "Oh my gosh,
That's amazing."
they probably put like I don't know, I don't know how many millions, but literally millions of dollars of ad spend over the years on that thing."
What I love about that too, and that's something that I learned early on with Harmon Brothers, is that idea of you can't have a joke just for a joke, which is what I was used to. That was like the learning curve for me, just coming from pure joke writing into ad writing, where every joke serves a purpose, an additional purpose, which I already am on board with because I already try and do that anyway. Like if you can layer two like more forms obviously in stand-up, it's like, can you get two different jokes into a joke? Can the setup be a joke? Like, so I'm all for like condensing stuff as much as possible. And so that was neat for me. A new exercise, a new way to filter my writing as I'm going through after the first draft is like, cut this, or can I change this joke that is tangential right now and get the product or the problem or the solve in there somehow.
Yeah. And that's what I think, this is my personal belief on this. I think that like one of the biggest impacts we can have as like writers and like marketers when we're working on especially comedy stuff is that if we make the jokes centered around the product and its value props, because otherwise you fall into that same trap of the outpost.com stuff. It's like you can have some of the funniest, most outrageous crap, but if you don't connect it in a really meaningful, memorable way to what the product does, most of the time it's just gonna like be completely lost on consumers.
Thank you for watching Raising Unicorns!
Subscribe now.
Stay tuned next week for part 2.